My fiancée gave my paper's first authorship to her junior. Shortly after I finished my paper, her junior posted an update online. Q1 ECI Paper A. Huge thanks to my senior Victoria for giving me first authorship. I immediately took a screenshot and sent it to my fiancée Victoria, who was his senior. What's this? The paper I slaved over, and he dares to take first authorship without ever having met me? Victoria laughed it off. Julian needs a paper to get into the graduate program, you know. You're so brilliant academically, you don't need this one. He's applying to work with your future supervisor. You should go put in a good word for him. Retract it, I replied coldly. Give me back the first authorship, or don't blame me for what comes next. She left me on read. Then she turned around and recommended Julian to my potential supervisor. The signature on the recommendation letter was a forgery of my own. That night, during Julian's celebration party, Victoria called me. Julian just used your manuscript. How could you report us for academic misconduct over it? Withdraw the report immediately, or Julian will be blacklisted Chapter 1. He just used your manuscript. Do you have to be so cruel to Jules? His GPA isn't high enough, but with one Q1 SCI paper, he can get into your research group. Why are you being so petty? Why must you go against your own junior? Seeing Victoria's fury, I was seething. He needs a Q1 SCI paper for grad school, but have you forgotten that I need this paper to apply for my PhD with Professor Reed? You've known for 5 years that I've wanted to study under her. What is the meaning of doing this to me now? Then just write another one. You're so brilliant, it's just a matter of spending a little more time. What's the big deal about giving one to your future junior? Victoria Quinn. I grabbed a vase and smashed it at her feet. Shards flew, scratching her arm. How dare you say that after 25 years as childhood sweethearts, we were at each other's throats for the first time. I built the experimental rig screw by screw, logged every single data point, ran every last simulation, and wrote every single word of that paper for 3 years, 1,095 days. I poured everything into this work, but that junior of yours couldn't even get the grades for grad school in those 3 years. And in the end, he gets to steal my results? On what grounds? Victoria took a deep breath. You don't understand. Jules is very smart. He just needs a chance. If you just give him your paper, then what about my chance? I stared her down. Cut the crap. Professor Reed's PhD admissions close in 2 weeks. If you don't retract the paper and change the authorship by tomorrow, don't blame me for disregarding the history between our families. I threw the file of evidence at her. This contains a complete record of my work, from the proposal to the final manuscript. If you think you can, let's see your junior produce one of his own. If I don't see a retraction tomorrow, I'm submitting this immediately. You think carefully, Victoria. You'll have to face the consequences for stealing my manuscript, too. Victoria fell silent. Finally, she let out a deep sigh. Fine. I understand. Chapter 2. The next day, Victoria did as I said and had the manuscript retracted. But when it was resubmitted, I was shocked to find that the junior, Julian Morgan, was still the first author. My name had been added, true, but it was buried way down the list as the 8th author. My classmates who saw the paper couldn't help but snicker. You could get 5th author just for bringing coffee. Putting someone at 8th author makes it painfully obvious they're just trying to leech a publication. This undergrad, Julian Morgan, is amazing. A Q1 CI paper as an undergrad? I only managed a Q2 paper for my master's graduation. And isn't this 8th author, Sincere Stewart, a master's student? How shameless, trying to leech off an undergrad's work. The paper in my hands trembled violently. I realized the revision hadn't just added my name. More than 20 irrelevant people had been added as well. Victoria had even given 4th authorship to someone who had done nothing more than run errands and print out the paper. And yet I, the original author, was tossed to 8th place. This was a provocation. This was Victoria's way of expressing her discontent. And 8th author was nowhere near good enough to apply for Professor Reed's PhD program. Fine. If someone can't understand a threat, they can't blame me for tearing away the facade. I gathered my evidence and headed back to my office, but my phone suddenly lit up with a number I hadn't seen in 2 months. I answered, overjoyed. Dad? Mom? Is your classified project over? Not yet, son. But friends of ours at your university told us there's a problem with your paper. Do you need your mom and dad to help? A flicker of disappointment passed through me, but I quickly composed myself. I can handle it myself. Dad, Mom, you focus on your project. Have faith in your son. I heard a pleased laugh from the other end. Is that so? Looks like our son has grown up. I knew that a single word from my parents could resolve this entire mess. Professor Reed might even accept me as her student out of respect for them. But that wasn't what I wanted. I wanted to be recognized for my own abilities, not because of my parents' reputation. That night, I stayed up all night meticulously organizing the evidence, and I submitted the report the next day. Not only that, I prepared another little gift and uploaded it to the internet, a 109-page presentation. It detailed the entire history of my relationship with Victoria, from childhood friends to lovers, and then to our engagement. That's right, Victoria and I were fiancés. We were just waiting to graduate before getting married. In this context, her giving my paper to Julian Morgan looked particularly damning. The presentation went viral immediately, and the topic surpassed 100 million views. But just as the internet was rallying to my side, another presentation, this one 200 pages long, began to circulate. I opened the file, stunned. It was a full-throated defense of Julian Morgan, and it offered an explanation for my relationship with Victoria. Yes, we were fiancés. But it claimed we'd had an argument, and I had started spreading rumors about her and Julian out of spite. This presentation was Victoria's work. The internet immediately split into 2 camps. My private messages were flooded with heated debates. I countered by posting a screenshot of my official report and the submission confirmation. The evidence has been submitted. The truth isn't decided by online arguments. When the university's review committee releases its findings, everyone will know who's lying this time. Victoria had nothing to show. After all, I had a complete, unbroken chain of evidence from the project's inception to its completion, and Julian Morgan had nothing to show for the last 3 years but a history of partying and slacking off. Online opinion swung decisively in my favor. Victoria called me. Will you only be happy once you've completely ruined Julian's academic career? The irony was staggering. What do you mean I ruined it? It was my research. Someone stole it, and I'm supposed to just swallow the insult and stay silent. But Jules, Victoria, I cut her off. This isn't some trivial matter. Professor Reed is a titan in the aerospace field, an idol I've revered since I was a child. I will not give up this opportunity. Julian Morgan is not worthy of it, sincere Stuart. I hung up the phone. Now all I had to do was wait for the results. The truth would come out. But I never expected the result to come so quickly. When I checked the portal, however, the feedback was that my report was unfounded. Sincere. The door opened. The professor wants to see you. Chapter 3. The moment I opened the office door, an ashtray slammed into my chest. This is madness, Professor? I stared at Professor Davies in shock. She frowned at me. If you don't want to graduate, then keep spewing nonsense online, Professor. It's not nonsense. You know how hard I've worked these past 3 years. That paper. You dare talk back to me? She cut me off. I've checked. You didn't write that paper at all. Victoria wrote it for you. You've produced nothing for 3 years, coasting on your girlfriend's efforts to get this far. Now that she won't ghostwrite for you anymore, you've decided to resent a rising star, Professor. I looked at her, incredulous. From the proposal to the final draft, I reported my progress to you every single week. How could you possibly think Victoria wrote it? Vicky confessed. She said she and Jules gave you all the results for your weekly reports. She looked at me with a mix of pity and contempt. Sincere, oh, sincere. You come from a poor background. You fought your way into university, into a master's program, Instead of working hard to change your fate, you resort to these kinds of dirty tricks. I've already had those online rumors taken down. Now you go back and start a new research project. Produce something on your own merit, otherwise you can forget about continuing your studies. Kicked out of the office, I was in a daze. Start a new project from scratch. Wouldn't that take another 3 years? Professor Reed's final PhD admission window was about to close. How could I possibly produce anything in time? As I stood there in despair, a familiar voice drifted from the office. "Oh, Vicky, why didn't you tell me sooner that you knew academicians Charles and Eleanor Stewart? I've already had the online posts taken down, and I've spoken to the review board. I testified that Sincere was fabricating the story. You don't have to worry." "Charles and Eleanor Stewart?" I froze. "Aren't those my parents?" Victoria's voice was filled with pleasant surprise. "Thank you, Professor Davies. If you hadn't stepped in, Jules would have been destroyed by the online mob. Haha, you're a girl the 2 academicians watched grow up. Of course I'd look out for you. My research group could really use some resources allocated from them. For that, Vicky, I'll have to trouble you," Victoria answered solemnly. "Don't worry, Professor Davies. I'll speak to my uncle and aunt." So that was it. My fists clenched. When I got home, I hesitated for a moment before calling my parents. "Dad, Mom, I can't solve this on my own anymore." Chapter 4. It wasn't long before Victoria called. "Sincere, there was a project under Uncle and Aunt's purview that was supposed to go to Professor Davies, but something's gone wrong and it's not being approved. Could you ask them about it?" I let out a sarcastic laugh. "No need to ask. They found out what you did. They've cut off all of Professor Davies's resources." "What did you say?" Her voice was thick with disbelief. "Sincere, I know you still misunderstand me, but don't let personal feelings get in the way of professional matters. Professor Davies is an expert in the aerospace field. There would be no mistake in giving her certain projects." "Victoria," I interrupted him, "there are countless experts like Professor Davies in this field. There's no project that must be given to her. Plenty of people are lining up to take it. Why should it be her? Since you were so willing to trade on my parents' reputation behind my back, didn't you have a backup plan?" "Sincere, you overheard." I didn't answer. "Sincere, let me explain, actually." I hung up the phone and blocked her number. Since she dared to challenge my bottom line again and again, she deserved to bear the consequences of her failure. As expected, Professor Davies grew restless. Victoria tried to reach me through several people, but I refused to see any of them. Helpless, she had no choice but to go back to her own parents. Our families had grown up in the same faculty housing complex. My parents were researchers on classified projects, and Victoria's parents also held positions at another research institute. Still, a multi-million-dollar project was a heavy lift for them. I don't know what Victoria told her parents, Patrick and Catherine. I only know that they managed to secure a multi-million-dollar project for Professor Davies. That evening, Victoria found me. Sincere, I was wrong. She looked exhausted. I didn't have to ask to know. To fulfill her promise to Professor Davies, she must have been under immense strain. "You've certainly exhausted yourself for Julian Morgan, haven't you?" I sneered and turned to leave, but she quickly grabbed my wrist. "I didn't get that project for Julian, I did it for you." I froze. "I've already explained everything to Professor Davies. The paper has been corrected. You are the first author, and Julian's name is removed. Professor Davies spoke to the review board and said the previous slander against you was all a misunderstanding. I've posted a clarification as well." I quickly pulled out my phone. Sure enough, under the old posts about the dueling presentations, there was a new clarification from Victoria. She had taken all the blame on herself. I was a little surprised. "Why?" A pained expression crossed her face. "I thought you were just throwing a tantrum, but when you actually blocked and deleted me, and refused to even see me, I knew you were truly angry. I've regretted it every day since. I wanted to make up for my mistake." Her phone buzzed. The caller ID read Jules. Instantly, a notification for 99 unread messages popped up. "Senior, why did you remove my name? Is it just your name on it now?" Senior, why aren't you answering my calls? You were never like this before. Senior, if I did something wrong, I'll change for you. If you're willing to come back, I'll be your boyfriend right now. She handed the phone to me. I raised an eyebrow. You trust me that much? You're my boyfriend. No, my fiancé. I took the phone and right in front of her navigated to the block contact page. She remained perfectly still. I pressed the block button. She just watched me. Sincere, Jules has always been my direct junior. That day I saw him having a breakdown in the study room, and it reminded me of you. You used to stay up all night for a single formula, your eyes red as you worked through the derivations. In that moment my heart went out to him. I stepped aside, letting her into my apartment. Surprise flashed in her eyes, followed by joy. I had never intended to burn the bridge completely. A friendship of over 20 years isn't so easily broken. A stern lesson was needed. If Victoria was truly willing to change, I was willing to give her another chance. I just never expected her to change to a degree that even I found surprising. Chapter 5. In the period that followed, Julian Morgan started hounding Victoria, just as she had once hounded me. But Victoria deleted and blocked even their mutual friends, focusing instead on preparing to start our PhD program together. The night before my defense, she stayed up late helping me polish my presentation, not even having time to revise her own. Fortunately, we both passed Professor Reed's assessment. Because my paper had caused quite a stir, Professor Reed took us directly to an industry summit. As the cameras all turned to me, esteemed experts in the field, my seniors, were now asking for my take on difficult industry problems. For a moment, my hands couldn't help but tremble slightly. Wasn't this everything I had dreamed of? To have my abilities seen, to earn the respect of my peers. Mr. Stewart, could you tell us how you wrote this paper that's caused such a sensation in the industry? Sensation is too strong a word, but as for the writing process, I do have a few thoughts. As I spoke eloquently into the microphone, Victoria, who had been smiling by my side, suddenly glanced down at her phone. Her expression instantly hardened. The microphone was snatched from my hand. Victoria's voice pierced through the conference hall. Who said he wrote this paper? Everyone stared at her in shock. I, too, was in disbelief. Vicky, what are you talking about? But the woman who had been gazing at me with a smile just moments before now sneered. Ha! How long are you going to play dumb? She connected her phone to the large screen. The images were shocking, tragic photos of Julian Morgan being rushed to have his stomach pumped after a drug overdose, alongside a heart-wrenching, blood-soaked suicide note. Chapter 6. Victoria's voice was cold. I can testify that this paper was written by an undergraduate student. It has nothing to do with Sincere Stewart. For 3 years, he leeched off his junior, Julian Morgan. After stealing his paper and taking first authorship, he wouldn't even let Julian report it and instead bit back. Here is the evidence of the presentation he made to play the victim online. Everyone stared at the screen in astonishment. How could that be? This paper was written by an undergraduate. I can't imagine the potential of a student like that. Something's not right, Professor Reed said, narrowing her eyes. I recall that you, Victoria, are quite close with this undergraduate. How do we know you aren't fabricating this to protect the young man? That's right. An undergrad publishing a Q1 paper is just too far-fetched. Victoria faltered. Professor, I grabbed the microphone back. If you claim the paper is his, then show the evidence. From the proposal to the project approval, if you can produce a complete evidence chain, I'll give the paper back to him with that. I displayed my own evidence chain. Victoria's face went pale. The crowd gasped. He has all the experimental details. If this doesn't prove Mr. Stewart wrote the paper, then nothing makes sense. Ha, I sneered, looking at Victoria. How are you going to argue your way out of this one? Who says that evidence is real? Professor Davies suddenly stood up. Everyone, I was Sincere Stewart's master's supervisor. I have never seen the research process he just displayed. What? He's even faking his evidence chain. This is hilarious. Sincere Stewart tried to make a big splash, but I bet he didn't expect his own supervisor to be here. I felt a surge of panic. "Professor, you clearly saw all of this." Professor Davies just gave me a cold look and continued. "Perhaps you don't know, but this girl, Vicky, was practically raised by academicians Charles and Eleanor Stewart. She would not lie." Professor Reed froze. The others were also taken aback. Academician Stewart and Academician Stewart? A student of theirs would certainly be truthful. Suspicious glances fell upon me. Even Professor Reed's gaze was now filled with doubt. "Sincere, did you really?" "No," I shouted desperately. "I wouldn't lie either. I was raised by them too. They're my parents." A wave of laughter echoed through the auditorium. "Seriously? Who does this guy think he is? Does he think he can just drop the names of those two academicians? If just saying it makes it true, then I'm their student too, heck. I'm their son. Ha ha." Professor Davies patted my shoulder. "Sincere, you come from a humble background. Just focus on the work in front of you. Don't get ahead of yourself trying to climb ladders you don't belong on." "Sincere?" Professor Reed sighed and shook her head. "If that's the case, I really cannot accept you as my student. I can call them." My fists clenched. My voice rang through the hall. Chapter 7. Professor Reed paused, then nodded. "All right, Sincere. I can give you one last chance. If you can prove your innocence, I will still take you as my student." Deal. I gripped my phone and dialed my parents. Under the watchful eyes of the entire room, the contact name Mom was particularly conspicuous. People began to whisper. That contact name. Could he really be the academician's son? I just checked. The number he's dialing really does seem to be Academician Stewart's. Then does that mean he's— "We're sorry, the number you have dialed is currently unavailable." The harsh automated voice filled the auditorium. I quickly switched and called my father, but again no one answered. People in the crowd started exchanging uneasy looks. I tried a dozen more times. "Don't worry, everyone, they must be busy. I'll just try again." "That's enough, Sincere." Professor Reed pressed my phone down. "The truth is the truth. I expect my students to be honest with themselves and with their work. But it's clear that you do not meet my requirements. Professor Reed, Professor Reed." Victoria cut me off, holding up a childhood photo of herself with my parents. "I believe the truth is self-evident. As someone who grew up under the guidance of the two academicians, I am willing to stand by every word I've said." "Oh my God, it's a photo with the two academicians. She was photographed with them at such a young age. Miss Quinn must have an impressive background." Professor Davies smiled. "Indeed, she is the daughter of Professors Patrick and Catherine Quinn. Wow, both of them are leaders in the aerospace field. No wonder she knew the academicians at such a young age. Tisk, tisk. And then you have this other guy, really." All eyes were on me, stinging like daggers. "He's a disgrace to academia." I was pushed and shoved out of the conference hall. "Letting someone like him into our hall is just bad luck. We need better screening in the future." This student is never allowed back. A heavy rain had started to fall outside. I staggered and fell into the downpour, with nowhere to take shelter. I looked up. Victoria was standing a few feet away, holding an umbrella. I gritted my teeth. "Why?" Her voice was ice. I had already compromised and stopped contacting him. "Why did you have to keep tormenting Julian? What does that have to do with me?" I grabbed her by the collar, frantic. "If he wants to kill himself, if he wants to write a suicide note, that's his business. Can I control what he does?" Slap. A sharp blow struck my face. I stumbled over a stone and fell with a splash into a puddle, mud splattering all over me. I watched Jules grow, step by step. From his first year of university, he was such a lively, cheerful boy. He would never try to kill himself for no reason. The only possibility is that you humiliated him otherwise. He would never have written a suicide note in his life. Soaked in the cold rain, a chill ran through my entire body. "Is that your reason? You don't even suspect that he might be putting on a show for you? You're just convinced that I'm the one who tormented him? Jules isn't a two-faced person like you." She threw those words at me, turned and walked away, leaving me alone in the rain, a bitter, self-mocking laugh escaping my lips. My phone rang. I answered it. "Son, why did you call so many times?" "Mom and Dad just finished an experiment. Did something happen?" Tears mixed with the rain streaming down my face. I heard my own desolate voice. "Dad, Mom, there's something I have to tell you." Chapter 8. After hearing my story, my parents were silent for a long time. Finally, they asked only one question. "Are you certain it was that girl, Victoria, who did this?" They had watched Victoria grow up too. Until now, I had been trying to save her some face. But now, I gripped my phone tightly. "The child you raised never lies. Your mother and I understand." That same day, a video shot to the top of the trending lists. My usually low-profile parents appeared on camera together, personally confirming my identity as their son. They also detailed my entire academic journey, from childhood to the present, and gave a detailed endorsement and analysis of my Q1 paper. It caused an uproar. I always thought the two academicians didn't have children. Turns out they kept it a secret so their son could rise up on his own merit.
I know Sincere Stewart I was.
His classmate, he's an academic powerhouse. He could lock himself in the lab for 3 days straight. Julian Morgan was in my year. All he did was fool around with different senior girls and drink. He published a Q1 paper? What a joke. My parents used nearly every resource at their disposal to clear my name and spread the truth. When the video was released, Professor Davies was in a group meeting with her students, using me as a cautionary tale, earnestly advising them to accept their humble origins and not to aim too high. But then her students saw the video. Professor Davies's face turned crimson, and she abruptly ended the meeting. It wasn't just a clarification. My parents also had Victoria and Julian blacklisted, completely disregarding their 20-plus year friendship with the Quinn family. As a result, the project Victoria's parents had secured for Professor Davies was cancelled. Victoria came to find me herself. "Do you have to take it this far?" I was organizing my files and looked up. "What do you mean? You were the one in the wrong first. How could you drag your uncle and aunt into this to back you up? Do you really have to be like this?" Slap, I struck her hard across the face. "What do you mean I was in the wrong first? Who was it that gave my paper to Julian Morgan? When I take back what's mine, suddenly I'm the one in the wrong?" Victoria covered her face, stunned. For over 20 years, we had been the closest of childhood friends. In just a few short months, we had already had 3 physical altercations. Victoria gritted her teeth. "Tell your uncle and aunt to stop right now. Julian is threatening to kill himself again, then let him." I laughed out loud. She looked at me in disbelief. "What are you saying? Didn't he already try to kill himself during the summit? What, is he trying it again?" Victoria frowned and I smiled. "You'd better pray he succeeds this time, because if he doesn't, I have plenty of other ways to make him suffer. If he doesn't die this time, his life is only going to get harder." "Sincere Stewart," Victoria roared, "have you no humanity left? Right now, tell your uncle and aunt to stop or we are breaking up Clink." An engagement ring bounced off her face. It was the one we had placed on each other's hands when our families arranged our engagement. "Let's break up then." My voice was ice. "What did you say?" Victoria stared at me, her face a mask of disbelief. I thrust a list into her hands. "This is the list of dowry gifts the Quinn family provided for the engagement. Take a look. If there are no objections, sign and fingerprint it. All of it will be delivered to your doorstep tomorrow. As for the betrothal gifts, you can keep them or return them, I don't care." Victoria looked at me, taking slow steps backward, shaking her head. "I won't sign it." She tore the dowry list into tiny pieces. I frowned. "Then what do you want? With Julian Morgan standing between us, do you really think I would still marry you? I won't give up on Julian, and I won't call off our engagement." She turned and strode away. I picked up the engagement ring and took a few steps after her, but she had already slammed her car door and sped off. The ring dug into my palm. What makes her think she can have whatever she wants? I threw the engagement ring into the trash. Then I added a new line to a copy of the dowry list. Engagement ring, cash value, $25,000, Chapter 9. After that, Victoria remained active, attending various academic conferences. But because of my parents' intervention, both she and Julian Morgan were blacklisted by the academic community. Even Professor Davies's position became precarious. I, on the other hand, had numerous academic titans extending olive branches to me after my parents cleared my name. In the end, however, I still chose Professor Reed. She was almost flattered. I misunderstood you so badly before, yet you're still willing to choose me. I just smiled. You were deceived by Professor Davies. The fault wasn't yours. You were willing to speak up for me when I was under attack from all sides. For that, I am already deeply grateful. I've admired your integrity and academic prowess since I was a child. The reason I was so determined to choose you is also because you were willing to bring me to a high-level academic summit and introduce me to your peers, even before you knew I was my parents' son. For that kindness, I will be eternally grateful. That day, I officially became her student. Meanwhile, I don't know what deal Victoria struck with Professor Davies, but in the end, Julian Morgan was admitted into Davies's research group as a special exception. I later found out that Victoria had pulled several all-nighters to help Professor Davies secure an overseas project, making up for her losses. The condition was that Davies had to help Julian fulfill his dream of getting a master's degree. I said nothing, but quietly forwarded the evidence of their past misconduct to the overseas partner. The next day, the partner backed out of the deal. The contract hadn't been formally signed, so all of Victoria's efforts went down the drain. After that, every time she applied for an overseas project, I would report them. Finally, with all her overseas options exhausted and her reputation in shambles domestically, she remembered her parents. In this regard, her parents had always been willing to be her safety net. Patrick and Catherine Quinn soon went to see my parents. As lifelong friends, they appealed to emotion and reason, begging my parents to give Victoria some resources. But this time, my parents were unmoved. Not only did they throw out all the gifts the Quinns had brought, but they also returned every item on the dowry list, piece by piece. Staring at the room full of returned dowry, Patrick and Catherine fell into despair. Victoria was frantic on the phone. Then just give me a few of your projects, like last time. If Professor Davies doesn't get a new project soon, she's going to kick Jules out of the research group. To her surprise, her parents exploded in anger. Do you think projects are so easy to get? Last time, if your uncle and aunt hadn't given the green light, do you think that project would have ever ended up in Davies's hands? What did you say? Victoria was incredulous. Why would your projects need a green light from my uncle and aunt? Child, the situation is not as simple as you think. The only reason your mother and I have been able to hold these positions for so long is ultimately because your uncle and aunt were willing to help her father side heavily on the other end of the line. What were you thinking, treating Sincere like that? Even if there were no shared interests between our families, just ask yourself, for over 20 years, has Sincere ever been anything but wonderful to you? How could you do that to your fiancé for some young punk? The phone slipped from her hand and clattered to the floor. Victoria couldn't believe what she was hearing. For over 20 years, she had believed her family's status was due to their own strength. A little less prestigious than the two academicians, perhaps, but ultimately independent and irreplaceable. Only today did she understand that the two families were in fact an inseparable whole. No, that was only true for her family. The two academicians could separate themselves at any time without any negative consequences. There was a knock on the door. She opened it. It was Julian Morgan. Chapter 10 Senior, don't worry. Even if you didn't succeed, I won't blame you. Julian opened a food container, revealing porridge he had made himself.
I heard you skipped dinner again tonight. Come, try some of this. I made it myself.
Victoria looked at him and suddenly felt an overwhelming urge to hug him. Jules, I'm so glad I still have you at a time like this. It was the first time she had ever hugged him. He was completely taken aback. Senior, what are you saying? This is what I should be doing. I'm sorry, Jules, I'm useless. No, you're not. I'm sure you'll succeed. Senior Victoria shook her head. I miscalculated. Academicians Charles and Eleanor Stewart are powerful enough to decide life or death in our field. This time, even my parents can't do anything. Senior? Julian slowly pushed her away. You've got to be joking, right? Victoria shook her head again. It's true, but don't worry. Even though things failed, I'll ask a relative to arrange an office clerk job for you. Ah, useless. The food container was snapped shut. Julian turned to leave. Jules? Victoria froze. What did you say? I thought you were so powerful, but it turns out you're just a dog that was attached to Sincere Stewart. The moment he makes a move, you're nothing. Oh, you didn't even realize you were a dog, did you? Otherwise, you wouldn't have worked so hard to screw yourself over. Like this Julian Morgan. Victoria desperately grabbed his wrist. I'm in this position today because I was trying to help you. Did I beg you to help me? Julian lifted his chin. I complained a little, and you were tripping over yourself to give me a paper. I hadn't even started trying for real. It's hilarious. Who asked you to play the martyr? Victoria's eyes turned red. That's not what you said before. You said if I was willing to come back, you'd be my boyfriend. Who would want to be the boyfriend of someone like you? Disgusting. Julian shoved her away, taking a few steps back. You can't even secure a single damn project. And I wasted my time making you porridge. Julian Morgan. Victoria chased after him like a madwoman, but Julian had already hopped into another woman's Ferrari and sped off. Staring at the departing sports car, Victoria could barely breathe, her whole body trembling. Even when he brought her porridge, pretending to care, he was being chauffeured by another woman. She looked down at her own trembling hands. If only Sincere were here right now. He always knew how to soothe her wounded heart. Chapter 11. While I was working day and night in Professor Reed's lab, my juniors would often tell me that the woman was back again looking for me. I would stand at the window and look down from a distance. Unsurprisingly, it was Victoria. Over that period, she had sent me countless meals, drinks, and little notes through intermediaries. They all ended up in the stomachs of my lab mates. As for trying to add me from different numbers, that was a daily occurrence. I blocked them all, one by one. Senior, she's been waiting out there for a month. Is this really okay? Ignore her. I turned and walked away. Tonight, the professor and I are flying to Europe for a year-long project. If she wants to, she can wait here for a year. I heard the laughter of my juniors behind me. That night, I left the country for a foreign land. For an entire year, I heard no news of Victoria. When the project was successfully completed, the professor and I returned in triumph. At the celebration banquet, my lab mates quietly started gossiping with me. You remember that really pretty girl who was always waiting for you downstairs? She's paralyzed. And in prison I was stunned. What happened? She waited for a few more months after you left before she finally found out you were long gone. But we all followed your instructions, Senior. Not a single one of us told her where you were. She couldn't find you anywhere and ended up having a violent meltdown downstairs, injuring someone. She was expelled immediately. Later, somehow, she found Julian Morgan. I heard that when she found him, he was in bed with another woman. Ha ha ha. That's right, the three of them started fighting right then and there. She stabbed Julian in the neck with a knife. He died on the spot. After she did it, she jumped off the building. But unfortunately for her, she survived. Now she's paralyzed from the waist down, confined to a bed. I hear she mutters your name every day, Senior. Ha ha, a shiver went down my spine. Let's hope not. Amidst the clinking glasses and celebration, these old stories were briefly mentioned and then forgotten. The rest of my life belonged only to me. The end.